Off, Mum? Shut up. Oh, now I'm working. As soon as I said shut up. Thank you. Technology gods. So, good morning. We've got a few empty mats, but they'll come. Is it? Ah, traffic. You really ought to sort it out in Melbourne. Just don't let people have cars. It's easy. So, let's spend a bit of time while people are coming in and settling and going over yesterday. So we finished with a lesson which we would say is in a flexion series. So we'll talk a lot this week about this concept of flexion and extension. And if any of you would like to start getting anxious because we're using technical language like flexion and extension, please do. Feel free. What we try and do in Feldenkrais, and you'll see when we start talking about the competency stuff, Feldenkrais, as you know, was an absolute magpie. Maybe you don't know, he was a magpie, and he collected information and concepts and theories and ideas from anybody and everybody that he encountered. And we'll talk more about him as a man and how his ideas emerged. But obviously his understanding was rooted in a really profound, clear, clean understanding of anatomy and biomechanics. So there will be that element in the training program, and that you may say that that's kind of one of the allied disciplines, if you like, or the integrated disciplines that features, along with a lot of other disciplines. So, he borrowed a lot from, developmental theory, learning theories, what wasn't called neuroscience back then, but from the understandings of the nervous system in his time, the psychological influences that he had, in martial arts experiences. He was a judo aficionado, and so on. So there's a lot of these, what we'd say is allied disciplines, and anatomy and biomechanics is one of them. And the issue with anatomy and biomechanics is that it's another language. And we debate a lot whether we give you the official anatomy and biomechanics language or whether we keep it in the Feldenkrais realm of the experience. And what we've decided is to do both, so that you can talk, if you're working in a more sort of health-oriented setting or in a dance setting where they're using a movement language, that you can speak in that language. However, what we're most keen about is that the experience of the anatomy and the biomechanics is firmly in you. So when Jenny said yesterday that, yes, there are textbooks, however, you'll become your own textbook, we're actually really serious about that. That, sort of one of the hallmarks of a Feldenkrais practitioner, if you like, is that we internally reference something. So we'll hear something, we'll digest it. But when I say digest it, actually we do digest it. We check it out in relation to our experience. And that's one of our kind of ways of dealing with the world is how we experience that. So it's self-referencing. And then, of course, we're in this group, and we're not just self-referencing now, but we're encouraging you to talk to each other so that then you cross-reference your self-reference, if you like. And then when you're out in the real world, here's not real. Did you know that? It's imaginary. I don't know why I said that. It's that you cross-reference with other people. So you start getting this incredibly rich set of experiences that comes from yours and then is cross-referenced with more and more people. And that, again, is one of the hallmarks of what I would see someone who's really kind of gathered what they can from the Feldenkrais method, is this ability to reference other people's experience from their own experience. And it's that kind of then the capacity to walk in other people's shoes, because you know very well how you walk in yours. I didn't mean to say any of that, but it just popped out. And this would be Anna Gaffney that's just walked in. Is that a rude thing to do to you? Good morning. Welcome. Oh, no, you're fine. I'm just having a little chat. What I started out with, if I come back to the original thing, this idea of flexion, again, we'll talk a lot more about it in depth. So what you're doing first is experiencing it. So it's experiencing it at this very basic somatic, i.e. body-based level. And then we'll expand on it from a, anatomical, biomechanical kind of perspective. However, it's going to be a relentlessly flexing day today. So if you think you're unbending, today is the day that you'll become more bendable. Stroke. Small one. My student evaluations at home would be there was one last year. I work in a university. I don't think I told you that. And the students get to evaluate us till our ears bleed, literally. And there was one comment said, and Susan, your jokes are not funny, really, not, funny, Could you be a little bit more clear? Of course, the thing that really irritates us are these evaluations. If I go to my boss for my performance management, that's on the front page. That comment is on the front page with a little graph of how they rate me. Anyway, you don't do that. We'll ask you your opinion, but you'll be a little bit more polite. Okay, so flexion. Why flexion? So yesterday you obviously got the idea that Feldenkrais in this first couple of days at Amherst was very interested in catapulting people back to the beginning of their development outside of the uterus, and the sucking and the eyes, and this idea of flexion is a really important developmental step in a baby's evolution. So again, those of you who've had the good fortune to observe babies, they have a flexion stage, if you like, where they learn to engage the muscles that bend them. So they learn to fold up. So when they're in the uterus, they are folded by the environment that they're in. They're contained. So they are environmentally contained and flexed up, packaged. And then, they do their little wriggles and rolls and whatever in utero, usually end up head down, and they emerge into the world and they have very little tone, and they are pretty flop, sort of straight, some more or less. However, then they start curling up. You put them on their back and the baby will curl up. They'll bring their knees up and they'll bring their hands up, and they have this kind of flexion symmetry sort of stage. I'm giving you the jargon word. If you think of flexion as bending, they'll curl up. And think, why is that important? To lie on your back and just lie there, and you'll feel why it's important. And actually, you might have felt it yesterday without